I am so excited to make this video because I think as language learners or people in general, it's so easy to get down on ourselves so quickly and think, I should be making more progress, I should be moving faster, I should be doing this more, studying longer, being more. And it's really easy to take for granted all of the small steps along the way that you are making in your progress, because these small steps in your progress are actually the most important motivating factor in your continued success, according to the progress principle. So the progress principle says, out of all the things that happen in your workday, or in this case, in your language learning journey, seeing progress is the most important factor in your continued success and your continued motivation.
Whether they are trying to solve a major scientific mystery, or simply produce a high-quality product, everyday progress, even a small win, can make all the difference in how they feel and perform.
So the more often that you experience this progress, the more likely you're going to continue. Think about it. Like, if you're not having fun and you're not feeling like you're getting anywhere in learning a language, you might stop. So here are 10 points of progress that you might be overlooking on your language learning journey that actually mean you're way farther along than you think you are. So the first one is being able to read Instagram captions in your target language. This might seem like something small, but this is the language that people use every day. So I personally like to translate all of my Instagram captions into my target languages where I can, because this is the language that I am using every day. So when you see someone's post in Spanish or French, and you can read a little bit of it, you're able to read real conversational language. So don't take that for granted. Number 2, you have a study schedule that works for you. It might not be the craziest schedule or the perfect schedule, but having just a schedule that works for you means you're spending more time studying the actual language than finding resources. We all know how hard it is to find the right resource for you. And so if you've gotten over that hurdle, it means you're actually spending more time studying the language and you're progressing in that language more than you think you are. So even if this means you're only doing 5 minutes of Duolingo every day, if this works for you, you're actually farther along on your language learning journey than you may think. Number 3, you can study without your brain hurting. So do you ever get 5 minutes into a study session and you're like, my brain physically hurts, I must not have slept very well last night? But then you go and lay down for a nap and you're like, oh no, I'm totally fine. This is because your brain is
actually using energy to form those new connections and create new neural activity patterns, which is really just a fancy way of saying you're building a road from point A to point B where no road existed before. So first, the road is made of cardboard, and as you practice that skill, it becomes stronger and stronger, eventually becoming like biological concrete. And once this road has been built, information can travel across it easier and takes a lot less energy. It also allows other places to use that road to communicate too. So Mrs. Sentence Structure can come over and help Miss Pronunciation via this road, and they eventually figure out they should make a permanent road between their cities too. And you end up with this huge metropolis that is Chinese or Russian or French, with information traveling between a ton of neural pathways without too much effort at all eventually. But first, you have to put in the effort to make that first bridge.
Number 4. So once your brain starts to feel a little less foggy and a little less tired while you're studying, you may find that you're daydreaming a little bit or getting a little bit bored while you're studying, but the minute the teacher asks you a question or the minute you need to perform, you're able to come back and answer that question correctly. This is because as those neurons are strengthened, they don't need as much energy to communicate with each other, and so you can spend more energy on things like daydreaming. So this means scientifically you are much farther along in your language learning journey because your brain physically has more space and more energy to do those other things like daydream or getting bored. So you may want to make your study methods a little bit more challenging, but that's totally up to you.
And by challenging, I mean something that just kind of keeps you on your toes rather than like makes you want to die. There's also definitely a difference between legitimately boring resources and those that are just kind of boring because you've done them a lot.
Number 5. You're able to distinguish the start and the end of a word. Now, for advanced learners or people that are thinking about their native language, they're like, of course I can distinguish between the start and the end of a word, but language is sound. And so how do you distinguish French from violin? It's because you've trained your brain to think of it as a language so that your ears perk up and you know this is information coming in that communicates a message. So the fact that you're able to hear the start and the end of a word means you are much farther along on your language learning journey because you've trained your brain to pick it up as a language instead of violin. Number 6, you're able to pick up on the language out in public. Now, the first time you hear a conversation in your target language, it might not be the hot gossip or anything interesting that you're really hoping to hear. But the fact that you're able to pick up on it and hear someone's dinner plans means you're progressing in your language learning journey. The first time I heard Spanish out in public and was able to understand more or less the full conversation, it was just someone talking about their dinner plans. So no, it wasn't interesting. No, it wasn't super exciting. But because this wasn't super salacious, this might have been really easy to overlook as, oh, I'm just hearing someone talking about how much rice they need tonight. But then I took a step back and was like, wait, 6 months ago, there's no way I would have known she was even talking about rice to know the difference between a really exciting conversation, like hot gossip, or something that's just kind of an everyday conversation. So this was still really exciting for me to be like, wait, I know that this is kind of boring. So don't overlook being able to pick up on little bits of conversation out in public. Number 7, when you're in a lesson or reviewing something in a book and you see something that you're already really familiar with, usually your first thought is kind of, oh, this is such a waste of time. Like, I've already reviewed this, I already know this. But you didn't always know it. This might have been something that was really difficult for you in the past, and now when you're seeing it and when you're encountering it again, when your first thought is, I'm so advanced, I'm so much farther along than this, like how cool is that? That you're able to say, I'm much more advanced than the concepts that are being presented to me. Now, the way to take advantage of that is to say, okay, I'm really, really solid on the concepts right here that are being presented to me. How else in this sentence or in this exercise can I expand upon what I already know? So sometimes in my Spanish lessons, my tutor will present something that I'm like, ugh, I already know this. But I don't know if it's because I told him I live in New York.
But then he'll say, okay, what's good for eye pain? And list off all these like really hipster remedies like chamomile tea for your eyes. And I'll be like, chamomile tea for your eyes. For your eyes? Chamomile tea? Chamomile tea? See? Okay, well, I guess I've never said that in a sentence before. So I guess you win this round. Let's talk about some questionable remedies for your eye pain with chamomile tea.
So even though some of these concepts might be really old to me, I can still find a new way to really cement them in my brain. So the fact that you're recognizing anything as maybe boring means that you're actually really far along. So just like before, daydreaming or being bored or being kind of over a concept means your neurons are actually really strong in that concept. And I think that's a point of celebration if there ever was one. So number 8 might be a little bit more for advanced learners, but when you look up something in your target language and you just start reading and you understand what you're trying to Google without realizing it was in your target language. This took me a really long time in Spanish, so don't feel bad if you're not at this point yet, but I have my phone set to Spanish, and so when I Google something, it automatically comes up in Spanish. At the very beginning, this was way too difficult for me. When I first started doing this, I happened to be looking up a lot of things that I needed to know 100% what they actually meant, so it was really difficult to do this in Spanish. But recently, I looked something up. I looked up the definition for onomatopoeia, which I know is just like so out of left field, but I started reading it in Spanish, and I was like, wait, like I'm reading this in Spanish. Like this is not in English. Like that is absolutely wild. So this doesn't happen often, and it might be more geared towards advanced learners, but when this happens to you, oh my God, I was so excited. And so I don't want you to take that for granted. If this happens to you, like this is a really, really exciting moment in your language learning journey that you should stop and appreciate. Number 9 is kind of a fun one that I also think we overlook a lot, but it's knowing something about the culture you're studying that doesn't exist in your culture. So for me, the first one was learning about a Spanish board game. We were learning about, do you do sports or play sports? Do you do yoga or play yoga? And one of them was a board game. And I was like, I don't know that vocabulary word. And he was like, oh, it's this. And it's just the vocabulary word. And I was like, I don't know what that means. And so he was like, no, it's a really common Spanish board game. And I was like, oh my God, I never knew that before. And so knowing these little parts about the culture you're studying are so important to your general understanding of, yes, what people are talking about. But when you're studying a language, you're also studying a culture, and you're also learning about how people interact with each other that's different from the way you grew up. And so knowing something about a culture that you didn't know before and that doesn't exist in your native culture is a really important and really exciting milestone in your language learning journey. And number 10, what if none of these have naturally occurred to you yet? Well, you can just make your own milestones. So what I like to do is at every quarter, I like to think of some ideal scenario in each language that when it happens will force me to stop and be like, wait, I couldn't do that before. So for example, when my boyfriend's parents ask him to do something in Tagalog, right now I don't really know what they're saying, but that's what I wrote down for kind of my ideal scenario or scenario I should appreciate. When I was able to understand that his mom was complaining about how long his hair had gotten, I was like, wait, I did not understand this a few months ago. So this is a moment I should stop and appreciate as progress on my language learning journey, even though it's, you should cut your hair. And those are the 10 little small victories that you might be overlooking on your learning journey or on your language learning journey. So I love writing down these little small victories or moments that I should stop and appreciate in each one of my languages so that I can recognize them when they happen. Let me know what some of your small victories have been along your journey, and if there's any moment that you've written down to appreciate when it happens in the future. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!